What happens when an executive hears the words, "Why don't you give players what they want?" Well, often not that much, but in this case apparently quite a lot, because that's today's story. EA spent years pissing off their players, leading studios to their demise, and generally feeling very out of touch and frustrating. They killed greats like Command & Conquer, they killed studios like Visceral, and they even sabotaged their own wins, like, say, Mass Effect 3, which was extremely crunched out. Battlefield struggled. Anthem died, Mass Effect fell to pieces, Dragon Age Inquisition was a near miracle, Battlefront 1 was underwhelming, Battlefront 2 was a disaster, and this is kind of where Laura Miele comes in, because her 2018 promotion to Chief Studio Officer, basically happened in a time of really big chaos. Yet, it's that appointment, and overcoming that chaos, that may well have saved EA, at least by core gamers-ish. One of the first things that Laura did was actually to gather a group of influencers, to get them up in a room, and then she asked them what they wanted to hear. One said that he didn't understand why EA, quote, "don't give players what they're asking for." This guy, to her, basically became the face of all disgruntled EA customers, and apparently that is what set in motion plans to do right by those people, according to her. It was her efforts that actually saw EA rescue Star Wars Battlefront 2, reboot the NCAA football series, and resurrect the Skate franchise. And that Battlefield 2 fix job wasn't cheap either, because its rescue team apparently was around 70 developers strong. That's pretty big in terms of opportunity cost. But Laura's story goes back much further, and her new position, I think, is clearly quite well deserved. So Laura started when she joined the Command & Conquer studio Westwood in 1996, and she stayed on when EA acquired that studio in 1998. Fortunately, by the way, Westwood is one of those studios that EA did run into the ground. Now, she had taken on marketing duties at Westwood, and her new role involved putting a team together to develop advanced analytics that would later be used to inform EA's advertising. So a pretty big gig. She says she was a firm believer in using analytics to inform gut instinct, and that it was that instinct that prompted her first major career break, shifting Battlefield 3's marketing away from standard television ads and going online. That was her big breakout thing at EA, and we all know that it went down pretty well, because that game sold 5 million copies in the first week. And it's also no surprise that EA executives actually had to be sold on this online direction, and that they were quite worried about it, because they were very used to TV ads and billboards. Is this a case of donkeys leading lions? Probably. I mean, given the rest of what those donkeys did, definitely. From then, her rise continued, mostly in marketing and publishing, before becoming the Chief Studios Officer, a pretty big role. Essentially, she made her name at EA by recognizing trends and actually listening to what matters, and now she is the person who's basically running the show in terms of their studios. And it seems like decent decision-making may even become a company-wide policy. Why? Well, there's Laura being really good at her job, it seems, but there's also something else that happened in and around the same time. Respawn Entertainment actually doing really well. So the situation with them is that Vince Zampella was higher up in EA corporate as a part of Vince and Jason West moving over to EA from Activision following the Infinity Ward drama. And because of this strong corporate position, he was able to shield his teams from a whole bunch of EA's bullshit. Even though EA did do things like, say, make Battlefield compete against Titanfall, leading to Titanfall 2 selling terribly, which was sad because it was great. But Vince actually having some influence is why Titanfall, or at least part of, why it was allowed to run on a modified Source engine. Why Fallen Order was able to run on Unreal. And that's a stark contrast to, say, the BioWare developers who had to use Frostbite because the EA executives told them so, which was obviously bad for BioWare. Now, while Laura did some spearheading on the Battlefront 2 revival, Respawn were just quietly doing great work. We all know where that went. So, as Laura rose, Respawn also rose up. And soon they started reaping the dividends of their prototype-first development and their smart engine choices. Between them, right, between the sort of two groups of Laura and the things she was spearheading and then Respawn, well, they've overseen Battlefront 2's revival, Apex Legends, Jedi Fallen Order, I guess also Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and a whole bunch of other things, as well as things that we've yet to see. BioWare's Dragon Age 4 does seem to have kicked off before her rise, but Mass Effect's next entry appears to be younger, perhaps being able to learn EA's more recent lessons. And then there's DICE's next Battlefield, which seemingly is said to be a response to the failings of its predecessor. I mean, PR-wise, they've basically had Laura run the media junket all about how they are learning from Respawn and all of that stuff. So in terms of public relations, I think there's a reason why EA are really trying to big up Laura and her role. And also her bonus, or compensation, because it is really, really massive now. Well, thus far, they've actually got the goods to back up those claims with Laura, it would seem. I mean, Anthem was crunched out and rushed out because it got happy claps from Patrick Soderlund, even though it seems that really none of that was actually well thought out. For BioWare, they basically just had to impress the big exec. Soderlund, of course, is also the guy who doubled down on the marketing failures of Battlefield 5, pretty much alienating himself, making himself and DICE seem very out of touch indeed, which was a pretty bad thing considering how Battlefield 5 certainly seems to have not got anywhere near as much, development time initially, or development support as it went on, because they really didn't seem to have covered really much of what they wanted to with that game. And of course, all those failings were going on at a time where basically EA seemed to be fetishizing the idea of missing the mark entirely. So what is this new era of EA like? Well, it seems to be hard to turn away from the old. They might even be trying to undo their Visceral fuck-up. Remember Visceral? Amy Hennig was there, they were supposed to do Star Wars Ragtag. Well, EA have since hired former Monolith boss Kevin Stevens to lead a new open-world action-adventure game studio. So okay, that's not what Hennig & Co. were making with Ragtag, but it certainly is something new. Then there's Codemasters. Now, I'm not sold yet, but EA really are trying to tell us that they're not going to destroy Codemasters. They seem to be aware of what we think of them as a studio killer. The CEO, Andrew Wilson, confirmed that they will be hands-off with Codemasters, and that Codemasters will largely be left to their own devices. Will Formula 1 My Team become Formula 1 Ultimate Team? I mean, this is the rub because it's EA, so I wouldn't be surprised. And basically, that's the big stinker here. We've said all these good things, but it's still EA. The FIFA Ultimate Team people who are more than happy to squeeze as much gambling money and as much gambling-like stuff, or basically gambling stuff, into their games as they can get away with to skirt every, legal definition that they can. And this is where it's complex, because EA loves money. They seemingly are willing to get it via scumbaggery. And I guess no amount of shifting approaches is going to change that part of their business. So I suppose the challenge for people like Laura is actually getting the games bit right. Perhaps ensuring that the business people don't turn up to ruin the development of the games. But even if the development of the games is safe, will they ruin the monetization of the games? And that's the thing, because I am sure that she can help give the players what they want, right up until it rubs against monetization, and that's where I'm worried. I mean, you do have Jedi Fallen Order and Star Wars Squadrons, which have been pretty damn good in monetization. But you just can't shake the feeling that this is the people who run Sims the way that they do. The people who run FIFA Ultimate Team. And it's pretty damn hard to trust those people for anything. So where are we then for EA? Well, you've got these new approaches that seem to be paying off, and actually earning enough money to keep the money people happy. Apex is not a total dickhead of a game, it's actually an excellent game, and it's one that surpassed $1 billion lifetime revenue in under 2 years. It's a big victory for Respawn, which is, well, in a way, the golden goose of the company right now. I suppose until DICE is able to prove itself again. I mean, it's actually keeping up with Warzone. Apex, that is, in terms of total players, and I've got to imagine that's got EA executives smiling given how massive the COD brand is. You've got that success, you've got Fallen Order. I mean, damn, and that's down to a company culture and DNA that is Respawn Entertainment's, not Electronic Arts. And EA almost seem to know that, because if you listen to what Laura and, say, Vince and Respawn, especially like the Laura interviews that have came out in the press, EA seem to be trying to say that Laura's job is to spread the DNA of Respawn across the wider organization. And I think in that the real test is Battlefield. This is a make-or-break moment for EA. Not for their finances or for their future, but for how we actually look at them. Because if Battlefield can succeed under this new Respawn and Laura Miele version of EA, then we can begin to think that it's not just Respawn Entertainment doing good shit, that actually EA as a whole could be doing some good shit. And that would be good. Could set EA up for a few very good years. And for BioWare, well, there's not that much to say, but this new approach does spell a little bit of hope. Mass Effect Legendary Edition, I mean, I've played it, look, it is just Mass Effect again. But hey, it's Mass Effect. They're good games, and the Legendary Edition does treat them with a reasonable amount of care. I think a future where we get a good Battlefield, as well as a good Dragon Age, and a good Mass Effect, that actually seems plausible right now. And it only seems plausible in my head because of the things that Laura Miele says and Respawn's recent success. And seemingly EA giving many hints that they're trying to learn from that. So what's the future going to hold then? Will it be more Apex, Squadrons, Fallen Order-like successes? Or will it be the hubristic bullshit that led to Battlefield 5 being a really big failure and also Anthem being a very big failure? Well, you know what? Those failures were bloody expensive, and the people who have actually done things right at that company have been doing things right in a way that has been a bit new to a bunch of that company. We now have that company saying they've learned. So I really do hope for the former, even though I do still know that it's from a corporation that still will fight tooth and nail to keep gaming's worst monetization alive and well. The company that coined surprise mechanics. Fucking hell, it's hard to have a pure win in gaming, isn't it? But maybe this is as close as we can get in this brand of big AAA. You know what, if I can get a Battlefield 6 and a Mass Effect 4 that make me happy, then, you know what? I'll just have to live my best life and be happy with that. And I guess quietly ignore FIFA Ultimate Team and, hope that it kind of goes the way of the dodo. Maybe it will, because they've actually started to put in direct purchase cosmetics in those games. Maybe that's them trying to hedge their bets, knowing that eventually, regulatory bodies will actually just wise up and say, hey, that thing you're doing is called gambling. Fuck you, stop doing that. I guess if that bit's killed, maybe we'll just be left with good games. I don't know. I think it would be hard to come up with monetization as insidious. But you know what? I shouldn't tempt fate. So it's time to end the video. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. By the way, check out the Patreon if you want to get some cool loot and support what we are doing. All right. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.